What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
Who's us?
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Once again, welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, blessed and highly favored.
Yes, indeed. As always, great to hear and you are tuned in to another righteous and holy episode of Closing the Gap, where we strive to give you the truth about black wealth. And today's episode, we want to entitle this one, Plan for the what?
Worst.
And hope for the
Best.
Yes, indeed. So you plan for the worst and you hope for the best. What does that mean? Well, it means that, hey, life keeps on lifing. And you're never going to stop life from life, and that things are going to happen in your life. Things are not going to always stay the same. What you have now, you may not have tomorrow. The lifestyle that you're living today may not be the lifestyle that you're living tomorrow. Chances are that adversity is going to come up in your life, right, Will? So what we want to do is we want to give you some statistics. We want to give you some numbers financially, what you need to do, and then also spiritually, what you need to do. I'm reminded, Wilbert, of David in Psalm 23 and verse 4. It says that, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And when we think about that, David understood that, hey, what I'm going through right now, it feels like the valley of the shadow of death. But in the midst of the worst things that are going on in my life, I could still have hope and hope for the best because God is right here by my side.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? It's kind of ironic because, those are the type of verses that you got to lean on, in times of trouble. And, what I want the people to understand and know is that, we got to do a better job of planning and preparation. Because we know the rain is going to come.
Yeah.
And if we know the rain is going to come, don't wait till the day it starts raining to go think about going to buy an umbrella. So if I know the rain is going to come at some particular point in time, it's what I'm doing on those sunny days.
Yeah.
Am I, storing any seed in the storehouse? I got to make sure that I'm planning and preparing for those rainy days and for those tough times and those dark moments. So, for me, what I want to press upon the people and want them to understand is, we all know what you're doing. Dark is going to come in the light. But when you're in the light, make sure you stay prayed up. Make sure you get in that good book. Make sure you're on your knees and, talking to the Lord. So, when the tough time comes, you're not too shy to turn to him. Because I think we've all been and had those moments where, we hadn't been coming to the Lord the way we need to come to him. And then things happen in our life and we wonder, is he going to be there for us? We're wondering, and I'm not fit to come to him because, I haven't been, coming to him all along, and that shame tends to set in and kind of hold us back. And, I want to let everybody know that, no matter where you are in your life, at some particular point in time, you got to fall on your knees and cry out for help. So why not cry out when you in the good times?
Yes, sir.
And tell him thank you now. Go ahead and tell them a few more thank yous ahead of time.
That's right.
So when those dark days do come, you prayed up and you got some seed in the storehouse, and now you can turn to him and, be in a relationship with him and have those conversations, and you can allow God to speak to you and bring some peace in the middle of the storm.
Amen. Amen. Because storms will come. And so we have been consistently living in a storm in the United States. And that's why, when you started this podcast, Closing the Gap, you gave the subtitle, The Truth About Black Wealth. And this, closing that gap, there is a persistent wealth gap in America.
Yes.
We are always behind in that sense, right? We're ahead in the sense of, okay, long as we're keeping our faith in God, we're rooted and grounded, as you stated, Wilbur. But, the financial landscape for black households and black wealth in the United States has constantly been marked by a wealth gap. There's been a disparity between our wealth and the wealth of others. And if you look at it, you know, Black households did see an increase from 2019 to 2022 from the baseline of about $27,000 per household to $44,000. But that still, you know, lags way behind those white households. So it says like in the year 2022, it was estimated that for every $100 that a white household had, a Black household had $15.
Yeah.
Now that is a large gap. And so what are some of the things that, from your vantage point, Wilbert, as a financial advisor, that you've seen and that also caused you to start this podcast to deal with these disparities in that wealth gap?
The biggest disparity has always been the lack of trust for the financial services industry, the lack of trust amongst ourselves, and the lack of planning. You know, prior planning prevents poor performance. We've all heard that before. And when it comes to, you know, passing down wealth and inheritance and you know, creating legacies and leaving, you know, financial foundations for the next generation to start off on, you know, it takes some planning. There's some preparation and more importantly, there has to be some sacrifice. I got to be willing to put off for today so somebody else can have for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So am I willing to, you know, go through the art of delayed gratification? Am I willing to, you know, plant those seeds and be happy that they harvest at some particular point in time, even if I'm not the one that gets a chance to enjoy the harvest? So, you know, there's been a level of, you know, selfishness that's permeated our community. Unfortunately, on far too many occasions, I've met with people and, you know, met with parents and they say, well, you know, I'm not leaving money to my kids. They're going to have to struggle like me. Well, what kind of sense does that make? You know, our job and responsibility is put our kids in a better situation than what we were in. And, you know, due to that, the trauma that their parent has gone through, that they probably received from their parent. And they're saying that, well, my mom and dad didn't leave me anything and I had to get it out the mud, so to speak. I want my kids to have to get it out the mud as well. Well, why would you want your kids to get it out the mud when these other kids are picking it up off marble floors? You know, there's a difference. You know, and I want my kids to pick it up off a marble floor too. You know, I don't want them to have to get in the mud and get dirty. We want them to be in a situation where they can pick it off the marble floors and everything else. So, you know, understanding that the planning and preparation starts with us, understanding that the fundamental foundation of any solid financial plan begins with having the right kind of insurance protection. You know, are you saving? Have you prepared for the worst and then hope for the best? You know, are you investing for the future? So all those things that we talk about on a day-to-day basis that we've talked about since the beginning of the year, we've talked about planning, planning and preparation, evaluate your plan, constantly going through, you know, a metamorphosis, you know, even as the world around us is changing, you know, we're having a plan that we can go back to allows us to stay consistent and slow and steady and still win the race because we got a plan. We're not making rash and rush decisions because of what Donald Trump said yesterday. You know, we're not making rash and rush decisions based on what the Senate, you know, or Congress is saying today. We have a plan and a formula that we're sticking to that's going to lead us down a path of success, and we're following in that motion. So, you know, we got to have a plan, and more importantly, I think we need to start to have a purpose. You know, I don't think enough of us have a purpose, because when you have a purpose and you know what you're trying to achieve, you're willing to make some sacrifices in order to get there. I don't think enough of us have, you know, found a purpose just yet. And we want to think that, okay, you got kids, that should be purpose enough, right? But apparently not so, because we have a lot of people like me that have kids that are not thinking about their kids. I mean, one thing I learned, you know, as a parent, that, you know, once you have kids, it's no longer about you anymore. You know, you are secondary to your kid. And my mom reminds me all the time that I'm now second. When I call my parents just to say, hey, you check in, they ask me, well, how the boys are doing. They don't ask me how I'm doing. You know, they're not worried about how I'm feeling. They're not worried about what I'm going through. They're saying, you know, how are the boys doing? Do the boys need anything? Well, I'm sitting there like, well, I'm okay. You don't ask me if I need anything. Well, because their concern is not with me. It's with the next generation. And honestly, that's where it should be. We all should be thinking about the next generation, the future generations, but not just thinking, but we got to start doing. We got to start planning and preparing. So there's no amount that's too small. And I think a lot of times we think that, oh, I'm not a millionaire. Oh, I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of money. I can just leave for my kids and my loved ones. Well, what if you just start saving $50 a month, $100 a month? And over time, that's going to compound and going to grow. So now that child receives something. Because at the end of the day, I like to believe that it's not how much money you leave the next generation. It's the impact and the thought behind you leaving it. Just to know that my parents, my loved ones, they thought enough of me to do something for me. Makes me want to do the same for those coming behind me, but then I want to multiply that gift to them. If my parents leave me 10,000, then I want to leave my kids 100,000.
Yeah.
And if I can leave their mark and make their mark on my kids, and now all of a sudden they can leave their kids $1 million, and then they can leave their kids 10 million, and the cycle perpetuates and continues on. Well, that's where the wealth gap has come from.
Yeah,
the wealth gap in this community wasn't born out of one group of people being more intelligent than the other. It was born out of a lack of trust and a lack of planning.
Correct.
If we knew what to do, when to do, and how to do, then we could do. But because we don't know what to do, when to do, and how to do, and we don't trust anybody enough to learn what it takes to do, then we stay stuck in a position where we don't have anything.
Right.
And we're not leaving those legacies, and we're constantly talking about how do we come together. Well, if everybody left a legacy to their own family,
Yes.
then that means that every family has enough to come together to do something for the community and make a change for African Americans, people of color as a whole. But if my family ain't got nothing, and your family ain't got nothing, and nobody else's family has anything, well, we can't come together and do anything.
Right.
But when we do come together, what we're gonna be crying, whining, and complaining about what we don't have. Well, ignorance is no longer an excuse. There's access to information. There's access to resources such as, this platform. Of course, we provide financial advice and resource for people free of charge, consultations free of charge, just like a lot of other financial advisors out there provide information free of charge. Well, why don't you have the information? Because you have not, because you
Ask now.
So the Lord told you, write it down and make it plain and ask.
Yeah.
And ye shall find.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See, ye shall find. That's it. That's it. And so that's why we're walking through this valley of the shadow of death. And a lot of people are afraid in that valley because they're not asking God for the help. They're not finding those godly people that can provide them the help. And so the gap continues to stretch out. As you were talking right then, Wilbert, I thought about what you were saying about the investing and passing down the legacies. Another statistic that is troublesome as well when it comes to racial wealth disparity is that there has been a bigger ownership of homes within the African American community. With Black wealth, we are owning more homes now. We're kind of trying to take care of Big Mama's house a little bit better than what we did previously. But owning a home is a slow wealth earner, right? Whereas stock ownership grows at a higher rate than what home ownership does. And so the statistic says that, stock equity within white families is nearly 30%, but within Black families, Black wealth only own about 4% in stock. And that's troublesome. And that's why what you just said about somebody like yourself being a financial advisor, we need those that are listening to us that if they have not, to set up a consultation with you or anybody else to invest in stock. And the purpose of investing in stock is that so that you can close the wealth gap between your generation of family, right? That when what your parents had got you to where you are. And now it is incumbent upon you to invest so that the gap is less for those that are coming behind you, that you can make sure that you have enough for the now not only for you, but for the next generation. Too many times we're walking through the shadow of death in America, and the shadow of death is the lack of finances. I would say in this is one of those shadows of death for us, is that we lack the finances that we need to be able to sustain our families for generation after generation. And so we want to make it impress upon you. Take the time, set up a consultation, make the sacrifice to invest now so that you don't have to worry about things later on for your children or for your children's children, because that's how we will close the wealth gap. Because the main wealth gap that we want to close is the wealth gap between the generation previous to us to the generation that's coming behind us. We want that gap to close. And so, as we also think about that too, as I quote David in Psalm 23, David was one that also built up wealth for his children. He was one that made sure that he passed down a legacy within his family and his household. And so when we bring these principles from the scriptures to you, we are intentional with who we speak of in the scriptures. We are intentional with which scriptures we bring to you on the podcast, making sure that they correlate to the subject matter that we are talking about. Because David always planned for the worst, but hoped for the best. He understood that as a king, that there would be wars and people would attack him, and even those within his own household would attack him. But he made sure that his faith was firmly rooted and grounded in God, and that he trusted in God. And he constantly, as Wilbur said earlier, got down on his knees and cried out to God. And he asked God for what it was that he needed. And whenever he asked God for his needs were always supplied. So when you are facing adversity, make sure that you take the time to call out unto God consistently, to let God know about all of your troubles, and God will answer your cry. He will come and check on you. That's why David had the blessed assurance in Psalm 23 and 4 by saying that, yeah, I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, but I don't fear the evil. Right? And that's the key right there. We too many times we focus on death's shadow. We focus on the fact of what we don't have. We focus on the fact of where our lack is, that we cannot see God in the midst of it. And God is the one that relinquishes us from the fear of the evil that is present, right? God is a very present help in the time of trouble. And that's what David understood. So while we are calling out some troubling statistics, while we have a troubling chasm of the wealth gap in the United States and probably across the whole world, fear not, for God is with you. Continue to trust in him, lean on him, and call unto him for everything that you need, and you will find the comfort that you need. So Wilbert, what are some ways that we can also find comfort from you, from a financial advisor, because I believe that as we trust in God, God has given us persons like yourself that we can come to find the comfort to do what we need to do in the midst of the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death.
Well, one thing I've learned about God is He's gonna always give you what you need whenever you need it. You know, He's gonna always show up and show out. We always say, may not come when you want it, but He always on time. You know, I've been blessed and fortunate to be put in this position to be present on this station right now, because I believe that in our community, and I know we need this help. I know we need this information. I know the impact that can be made, you know, by someone taking the bull by the horns and getting their finances together and starting the financial planning process to put themselves in a better situation, and how it can change and affect not just their lives, but the lives of the people around them and the people coming behind them. So at the end of the day, you know, we have to ask the question. You know, we always asking why I don't have this, why I don't have that. It's because we haven't sat down and done the initial, you know, first step and just analyze the budget. We haven't done the income and expenses. We don't want to face the reality of what really is. We want to, you know, we want to avoid the inevitable.
Yeah.
And the inevitable is we have to sit down and we all got to come to Jesus and have a conversation, and we have to listen to him and do what he would have us to do, not what we want to do, because we in a mess, not because of him, but because of us. And we go deep into that right back after this.
Jesus. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, the truth about Black wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And once again, today's show is entitled Plan for the What?
Worse.
And Hope for the
Best.
Yes, indeed. And so basically, you need to have a plan for tomorrow, right? That while we are here today, life is going okay. We love where we are, what we're doing, and things of that nature. But what's your plan for tomorrow? How do you build and preserve generational wealth within your household? Have you even considered that? And if you have considered that, we want to give you some tools that will help you continue to broaden your thought, be able to put some meat to that bone, if you will. And then also, if you have not thought about it, then preferably what we bring up to you today will spark your interest, and you will go ahead and make the necessary sacrifices to be able to build a plan for your tomorrow, for you and your family. So when we talk about building generational wealth, and planning for the worst and hoping for the best, what do you say about the wealth transfer and where we are right now about, our financial foundation as a people?
Our financial foundation as a people is shaky at best. Our people perish through the lack of knowledge. They also perish through the lack of trust. The trust that we have within our community for each other, and the lack of trust we have for the financial systems. And, now, a lack of trust is not unwarranted, because there have been a lot of situations, circumstances that have, bled over into, our history. They gave us good reason not to trust. I mean, we can go back to the Freedmen's Bank and how, we saved a lot of, Caucasian banks, and how our banks were left to fail and our money was utilized to save other institutions, and that money was never paid back. That's where, of course, that term where we better off putting that money in the mattress than putting it in a bank or putting it in a financial institution. So we have that. We obviously have a lack of financial literacy where a lot of these insurance companies that are around today were started, insurance slaves, and a lot of their insurance agents were actually told not to sell valuable life insurance policies to African Americans. Wow. So our whole concept of financial literacy and building wealth and how to properly do it has been flawed from the beginning. We were allowed to, you think about it, we can go back to Emancipation Proclamation days when we came out of slavery. They say, you know what? It's okay if you let them buy the horse and buggy. It's okay if you let them buy the new suit and the new shoes and let them look good and feel good about themselves. But what we're not going to do is teach them about money. What we're not going to do is teach them how to create wealth. We're not going to teach them the true value of life insurance. We're not going to teach them the true value of investing, in saving, in planning, in preparing. We're not going to do that. We're going to allow them to be self-absorbed and allow them to be materialistic. Now, these things have perpetuated, and we can go down the line where, we look at, who saved Cadillac. The black man literally saved Cadillac from extinction when the Great Depression happened. And because we didn't have our money in the banks, we had our money under the mattress. So who were the only ones still buying Cadillacs during that time? It was us. So we've saved many in institutions, throughout the course of time. And we have been an institution unto ourselves the way nobody else in the history of the world has been. You know, we were a commodity at one particular point in time that was utilized to build a nation. And off the backs of us, we've built many institutions that are still growing and thriving today, that many have become millionaires and billionaires off of our efforts. So, you know, where we are right now is obviously not where we want to be.
Yes.
We want to continue to do better and get better, but we have to start taking some personal accountability and take some responsibility of understanding where we are. We now have an access to information. We have access to valuable resources. So now we have to start doing better. I need to start making sure I'm saving and planning and preparing. You know, there's a great wealth transfer that we hear about all the time in my world as a financial advisor.
Okay.
And all these companies talk about the great wealth transfer where they're projecting over $105 trillion is going to transfer from one generation to the next by 2048. And that comes in the form of wealth between insurance policies, investments, and things that are being passed down from one generation to the next. But it's also businesses
Okay.
that are going to get passed down or bought out. You know, you think about the electricians and the plumbers and all these trades where when I was growing up, a trade school was in every city. And all of a sudden there are no trade schools. Well, guess what? If we don't have any trade schools and nobody can perform these trades, who's going to own all of the plumbing companies and the electrical companies and, you know, the carpenters and the welders? Where are these skill sets going to come from? Well, there's going to be a monopoly on them. And if we don't own any of those companies, we would not be able to build as effectively and efficiently as we would like to. So we have to make sure that we start, you know, taking, you know, accountability for every area of the wealth transfer. A lot of times we get caught up in our own little world and making sure that, you know, I just want to leave some wealth for my kids. And that's true. We all want to do that. But we have to understand this problem is bigger than just us. And that's why I would tell people we got to dream bigger. We got to leave some wealth for the next generation to allow them to dream. We talked about this on a previous episode of, you know, money is a tool and a resource that allows us and allows our kids to dream and go after their dreams and chase their dreams of not just being skilled in an area,
Right.
but being skilled enough and having enough wealth to start a business in an area where they can now employ other people that have the same skill set. You know, where we can now own the electrical company. We can own the plumbing company. We can own, you know, the welding company and the carpentry company. We can, all these things. We have to be able to do that because that's where the greatest wealth transfer is going to happen, is because if we have the power to have ownership, now we have the power to employ. And if I can employ 10 people, then I'm affecting the lives of 10 families and their ability to plan and transfer wealth to the next generation. So we have to start understanding that when they talk about this great wealth transfer, it's not always just pure dollars and cents.
Okay.
But it's also about the ownership and the equity that comes from a lot of these families. Yeah, so you think about the people that own the big corporations now. Yeah, they're going to pass down their individual wealth, but they're also passing down an organization. They're passing down, you know, an additional commodity that's tangible, that's always producing revenue, you know, that's going to pass on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. Is the Waltons are not stopping with just the original founding members. You know, matter of fact, daddy long gone. The kids are now, as a family, probably 4 or 5 of the top 10 wealthiest people in the world. Well, guess what? It's going to pass down to their kids and their kids. And it's a never ending cycle in how that wealth is being transferred. So we have to start, you know, doing what we can do on our own level and being accountable to our own budgeting and savings plan, being accountable to our own 401k. The retirement marketplace is probably the second largest outside of business ownership area of wealth transfer, maybe the largest, if not close, due to the fact that if you think about what is most people's largest account, is it their checking account, their savings account or their retirement account. It's always the retirement account.
Yeah, okay.
The retirement account is the largest simply because most of us can't touch it. So because we can't touch it until we get a little older, the company's preventing you from touching it.
Grow.
It's allowed to compound and grow. So while that's growing, and of course we're constantly accessing the checking and the saving because day-to-day life is happening and we have to pay for groceries. You got to, pay for get an air conditioner fixed. We got to pay for a new car, a new set of tires, a new brakes, whatever it may be. Their retirement account, hopefully we're saving every month or bi-weekly. Whenever we get paid, we got a certain percentage, a certain dollar amount going into their retirement account. And it's sitting there from 25 to 35 to 40 to 45 to 50 to 55. Now, you don't get access until you're 59 and a half without penalty from the IRS.
Okay.
Now you can access that money without a penalty. Now, you still have to pay income tax on it. But that money now has been allowed to grow and compound over a period of time. So because it's been allowed to do that, that's usually most people's greatest asset. So now, if that's being transferred to the next generation, that's a lot of money that should be going. Okay. But some interesting facts that I found are that when you look at the average savings that are going into it and what that turns into for the average person, the average white American has $380,000 in a retirement account when they retire. The average African American has $117,000. Wow. Now, that's more than double. That's almost, that is actually triple what we have. And the ironic thing that I found, Hispanics actually have $120,000. So that means we're actually dead last when it comes to the retirement savings in this country. There's Caucasian at the top, then there's Asian, then there's Hispanic, and then there's African American. Wow. So in such a short time period, we've seen the change in the economic landscape. So we wonder why our voice does not matter and it doesn't hold as much weight. Well, in this country, we've learned they only listen when you can write the biggest check. That's unfortunately the way our world works. And because we can't write a big enough check, they don't listen to us. So we can control that though. Yeah. If we save more, now I'm putting myself in a position, if my retirement account is larger and now I can go through retirement living comfortably and now I still can pass on that to the next generation, now I'm leaving the inheritance. I'm leaving resources. I'm leaving assets. Because if we survive it on 117, imagine if we had 380. Yeah. So we could live on 117 and now you're passing on 260 to the next generation. Yeah. So now that's a head start for them, buying a new home, paying for college education, getting a jump start on their retirement planning process. So these things are not, anomalies. These are tested facts and are tried and true, unfortunately, and they're not to our benefit. We have to be better at saving, at planning, at preparing. And these are things that go back generations. I talk to my parents and people that are in my parents, generation all the time, because they're probably the bulk of my class, because they're the ones that are planning for retirement right now and actually retired. And so many of them have been in positions where they didn't trust the stock market. So they just left all their money in cash. It's been sitting in the safe account for 20, 30, 40 years, never invested. And yes, they did a great job of saving because all they knew was how to survive. But at some particular point in time, if they'd have sat down with a professional and got educated on how to go from save and survive to what I call strive and thrive, that $117,000 that they may have saved just in pure cash would have been $400,000, $500,000 over a 20, 30, 40-year time period because of what Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world, which is compound interest. If you know about it, that means you're getting it. If you don't know what it is, that means you're not. We're not getting enough of it because we're not participating in the market. They always say you got to be in the game to win the game. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't shoot. So they say shoot or shoot. So I'm going to make sure I keep shooting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So with that, Wilbert, all that insight is very helpful. And I believe that insight provides eyesight. That once we have more knowledge, then we're able to visualize the things. We're able to construct a vision for where it is that we need to go. And too many times, I believe that part of our issue is that what we have seen has been so much adversity and so many systemic issues that have been placed, barriers that have been set up against us, that those are the reasons why the elderly generation was able to purchase the Cadillac at that time, because the banking systems had failed them. The financial markets had failed them. You didn't have FDIC and these types of insurance measures with those things. But now, thankfully, that God has blessed a person like yourself to become a financial advisor, that when you show up as somebody that, as someone that can be trusted in that sense, right? That now we have somebody that looks like me, that has grown their wealth. And now as a result of they look like me, they've grown their wealth. Now I can trust them to grow my wealth. And that's important. We talk about representation matters, and your representation in this market matters. And that's what we want everybody to understand, is that why we come here is to give you this information, to build your trust in the financial markets, and to that if you don't have anybody that you can trust, then take the chance to put your trust. Number one, don't take the chance, but definitely put your trust in God, number one. But then take the chance to put your trust in Hamilton Wealth Advisors to lay out a plan for you and your family to grow your wealth and to manage your finances, that you can end up having something for the next generation. This is the insight that we're providing today, that while we know that the worst will happen, you need to have a plan for it. And when you have a plan for the worst, guess what? When the worst doesn't happen, you're going to end up on the south side. You're going to end up in one of the best situations. You're going to end up being able to have the comfort that you need, knowing that God has been with you. And the way that I believe that God is with us is that God provides us the various persons in our lives that we need to assist us to grow personally and financially, to get the things that we need. And so with that, we are persons. We are in a state, so to speak, ourselves, right? And I believe that everybody needs to look at themselves as in a state, being able to see your value, that, okay, wherever it is that you work, whatever way that you are gainfully employed, that you are the breadwinner in that sense, no matter whether you're male, female, whatever the case may be. You are in a state, and whatever you has is your estate, and you need to have a plan for that estate. And so, Will, could you talk to us a moment about estate planning for our people in our community and how important that is in terms of closing the wealth gap?
I mean, estate planning is vital. I would like to say, unfortunately, a majority of our wealth has been lost due to a lack of estate planning. I think everybody that's heard of stories or can look into their own families and see situations, circumstances where real estate was lost because, it wasn't deeded properly, or it didn't transition from one generation to the next. I know in my own family, my grandfather owned a lot of land down in the Wilcox County area. And of course, back in the day, granddaddy took care of everything. And grandmama took care of the house. And, granddaddy passes away, but nobody knows when granddaddy kept all the paperwork. Grandmama didn't have access to everything. She just knew that, the house was taken care of, the kids were taken care of, and she tended to the needs of the family. So when it comes time to, validate through a paperwork process, well, all of a sudden, the land is lost because we can't prove the land is ours because the deeds were lost. And of course, in many small towns and places, unfortunately, City Hall was burned down, or, paperwork was lost in the fire, or it was misplaced in transition throughout America. So all of a sudden, this is acres and acres and acres of land that has been lost. There's been situations where we've lost money due to the lack of the taxes being paid own a piece of real estate in the family where, you know, the family member didn't let anybody know that, guess what? You know, there's taxes owed and I don't have the money to pay the taxes. So instead of paying it, all of a sudden the house is seized. Now, this is a house in my family being, you know, my father being from Montgomery, Alabama. This is a house that was on the same street as the governor's mansion. The land alone was worth more than the home. But unfortunately, right now today, we don't have either. We'll be right back after this moment.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. And today's show is entitled Plan for the What?
Worse.
And Hope for the
Best.
Yes, indeed. And so we've been talking about a few things, Wilbert, and now as we continue to move forward in the show, let's talk about how, you know, different layers or pillars of generational wealth. And I think this is important because these are our foundational pieces that assist us in, you know, planning for the worst. That when we build up in these, you know, then that's when we can hope for the best, truly. And I think while the title of the show, we entitled it, and it may sound a little gloomy, I think if everybody listens to what we've been giving today and truly exercise it or tries to, they'll see the hope in these things, right? That even when you are planning for the worst, that what you are actually doing is preparing yourself to have greater.
Yes.
When you set these things up. So understand that while that is the title of the show, this is a hopeful show, regardless, that all of the pieces that we're providing to you will help, will assist you to live your best life and to prosper the way that God desires you to do. And it will display that God is with you in the valley of the shadow of death. So let's talk about these pillars of generational wealth and what are they and how can we establish them. And that first one is you know, financial education is the base, I would say. Right? Financial education is the base. So what would you say about that? How do we educate ourselves financially?
You know, what I see, and one of the things I took from, you know, kind of what you just said also is there's peace in preparation. And I think that's what we have to do a better job of having is preparing. And when you're prepared, you have more peace. You know, when I studied for that test, I'm not as nervous when it's time to go in and take that test because I know I prepared myself. And, you know, the pillars of the generational wealth and creating generational wealth, you know, you can have peace if you've prepared yourself. Like you said, we've created that financial education. If you're, you know, doing things like listening to this, you know, show, you know, taking in the information and the education that we provide, if you're seeking additional representation, and seeking out financial advisors and seeking out help to educate yourself to be better. And obviously there are several phases to actually bringing that to pass.
Yes.
Along with, like I said, once you created some financial education for yourself, if you learned, you know, when I know better, I do better. Now you can put that plan into action. So once you've established the plan, and one of the big keys of growing your wealth, of course, especially using the stock market, because most people's number one way of investing is through their 401k, and understanding how to properly invest and diversify those investments. And those are things that don't stay the same. You know, as we get older, our investment diversification is staying because it's changed because the biggest factor in making money is time. But the less time I have, the less aggressive I need to be. See, when I'm 30, 40 years away from retirement, I can be a lot more aggressive because I have time to recoup and recover from those market mishaps. You know, the closer I get to retirement, the less time I have to recover from those mishaps. So that investment diversification is key in understanding that you should never be invested the same way your coworker is, unless you and your coworker have the exact same situation, circumstance, age range, and goals and objectives.
Yeah.
And usually some of those things are going to differ. Yeah. So it may be similar, but not exactly the same. So you got to make sure that your investment diversification lines up with your time horizon. You know, with, you know, your goal and objective as far as the amount of money you want to have. If you want to have more money 20, 30 years from now, you're probably going to have to be more aggressive. Which means you're going to average a higher rate of return. If you don't need a higher rate of return and you are more risk averse, then you need to understand, well, you may need to invest more to accomplish the same goal as someone who is willing to invest less but be more aggressive. Okay. So there's always more than one way to skin a cat. There's always more than one way to get to a desired destination. But you have to understand your goal and objective and your plan, and make sure that your investment diversification aligns with that, just that.
Okay.
A big part of that, we talk about all the time, and we always talk about making money, but we got to talk about how to keep it too. Because the same way the retirement account is the number one way for most people to invest into the stock market, unfortunately, I tell people, when you look at your 401k or your 403b or your IRA or your 457 or your TSP, any one of those tax qualified plans, when you look at it, you got to understand that 30% of it don't belong to you. Uncle Sam is going to get his cut, and it's going to come first. And you in the state of Alabama, so you have state taxes as well. So understanding, when you look at your retirement account, that this is a tax qualified opportunity, which means taxes will be paid upon distribution. So for every dollar you pull out, it's going to be taxed as federal income to you, as ordinary income. So those taxes have to be paid on that money at that particular time. So you got to account for that. So if you want to have a certain amount of income coming in, that means you got to make sure it's more money in the account to make sure that you account for the taxes that's going to have to come out at the same time. So understanding how to be more tax efficient. So guess what? After we've invested in the 401k and the 403b and TSP, we may need to invest in a brokerage account where we only have capital gains. We may want to put some money into a Roth IRA where all the money is tax-free once you start accessing it back at 59.5 down the road. You may want to invest into some type of investment-grade life insurance opportunity or some other investment where you have the opportunity to access that cash back in a tax-free manner. So understanding how to be more tax efficient will also help you understand, what your livelihood is going to look like in the future, because we have to plan for tomorrow today. We got to plan for what we want the end to look like in the beginning. And if I want to retire comfortably, having a certain amount of income, I got to start planning for that today. I got to start making sure that I'm saving enough today, because the sooner we start the saving process, the less we have to start with. The later we start the saving process, the more we're going to have to save to accomplish the same goal. So time is always the biggest factor in getting where we want to be. And once we understand how to properly invest and diversify those investments, once we understand how taxes are going to affect it and how to be more tax efficient. So we've done some retirement planning along the way.
Okay.
Now we actually can look and address estate planning. Because I tell people, we can't talk about what you're going to leave the next generation if you ain't made sure that you're going to have enough income to survive when you're here. So we all want to leave a legacy. And leaving a home and leaving, retirement accounts and investment accounts, it sounds good. But if you don't have enough money to pay your bills today, you won't keep that house. If you don't have enough money to pay, for your everyday expenses and to live comfortably, then guess what? It won't be anything left inside of that 401k. Won't be anything left inside of that brokerage account or that Roth IRA. So we have to make sure that we're doing full service financial planning. So financial planning has many different umbrellas and many different tentacles. And we got to make sure that we understand the totality of what we're trying to get involved in. So we want to have a financial plan. But under the financial plan, we got retirement planning, we got estate planning, we got, investment planning. There's different levels and layers, but all of those things work together. All of those things get you from one phase to another. Like we talked about the investment diversification. That's your investment planning. Yeah. And then we talked about saving for retirement into tax efficient vehicles. Okay, so now we talk about retirement planning. And then once we leave retirement planning, we're going into the income planning. We're talking about how much is your Social Security going to pay you? Do you know? Do you have a pension? Do you understand how that works? How do you take income from your 403b, your 401k? Do you need an annuity to have consistent streams of income to come from? So we have the income planning to make sure that we never run out of money. Because if I know I'm never going to run out of money, then I can predict the kind of money I'm going to leave to the next generation. So now I can make sure I do some estate planning and don't just get a will, because a will comes with a bill. And most people don't understand that. And I say that because if you have a house or you have a piece of real estate and you have it in the will, Well, that person still has to go through probate, which means an attorney in most situations still has to be hired, which means that's billable hours, which means there's a cost. So if you didn't leave any money with that will, you've now created a bill for who's ever inherited. So now you got to hope that they have the resource and the assets to go. You have to hope that nobody contests that particular will. Now, all of a sudden, that increases the amount of the estate planning bill that I have. So I have to do that. So if I have assets and I have a home, well, guess what? Go get you a trust. It's better to pay the extra money now for a trust than to pay the money for a will because it's cheaper. So people get around and say, well, I heard getting a trust is expensive. Well, guess what? Everything is expensive until you wait till the time that you need it. If I know you need a pair of shoes right now because you ain't got none on your feet, I can up the price. And you're going to give me whatever you got in your pocket because you don't want to walk around barefooted. But if you got some shoes on your feet and I offer you a pair of shoes, you can negotiate.
Right.
Because you're not in the same type of need. So when we're in a situation where now you've been left a will, and now all of a sudden the average cost to probate in the state is $6,000 to $8,000 for an attorney, and that doesn't mention how much it may cost if someone is contesting it, and the amount of time that the case may now take. I've seen wills take years to be, executed through the legal process. So you've had to hold that attorney for all that time. Those costs and bills and fees are adding up on you. Where if you just got a trust. And a trust may be, for an entire trust package, it may be $2,000, it may be $2,500, maybe $1,500, just depending on what are you getting. But that sounds a whole lot cheaper than that $300-400 you paid for the will, and the $6,000 to $8,000 that the person that's receiving it is going to have to pay to probate your estate. So we got to start understanding. We talk about working with professionals, and cheaper ain't always better. So most people say, well, guess what? Well, I'd rather spend the $300 for the will than spending the $2,000 for the trust. Well, all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. If we can put that asset in a position where it never has to go through probate, now all of a sudden I can make sure my home stays in the family. I can make sure the person that I want to have access to it has direct access when I want and how I want. I can put stipulation that says, guess what? This person or anyone, no one can sell the particular home because I want it to remain in the family for this particular reason. We can now stipulate how we want things to operate. We can now, what I call, control our assets from the grave. So we got to be able to control something. And the only way to control it is to have ownership of it. And the reason why we don't control anything is because we have no ownership, not even over the things we've spent our lives dedicated to. Most people spend their lives as dedicated to paying their mortgage as they do their spouse. Because they've been hand in hand the entire time. And that spouse been asking you, did you pay the mortgage on time this month? Making sure that house note is being paid. And at some particular point in time, hopefully you've paid that mortgage off. Now y'all own it. Y'all have worked for it. You've slaved diligently on the job to make sure that y'all own your own little piece of heaven. So what good is to own that little piece of heaven and go all through all of that to making sure that you can own and take care of it, only to lose it because you didn't properly plan to keep it.
Yeah. So plan for the worst, hope for the best. Now that's good financial education. We'll appreciate that. Those pillars of generational wealth. And I think that as long as we put those in place, and that will lead us to have the empowerment for generational wealth in our community, right? And through that type of those pillars, and number one, everybody needs to understand that you need to work with a reputable financial advisor to go through those pillars of generational wealth, because the information that Wilbert has provided is key. There are some baseline keys to where you need to start and what will get you to the place that you need to be in. Some of us don't even know where we need to be. That's why financial education is important. That's why we come here on Closing the Gap podcast and tell you the truth about Black wealth, because we want to provide you the information that you need. And then also, even if you already know it, we want to remind you of what it is that you do know so that you can continuously exercise it and pay attention to what you have already put in place. But if you haven't put anything in place, number one, we want to empower you to build a generation of wealth and be able to plan for the worst and hope for the best by, number one, having a conversation and working with a financial advisor. Number two, you need to bring your children into the discussions about your finances. When we talk about these pillars of generational wealth, it's important that, as you talked about, Will, but having a trust, having wills, probate, understanding all those things, they'll be less cumbersome if we have the conversation with our family members, if we have the early conversations with our children. And many of us don't do it because, first of all, we don't know it. We have not had the conversation with a Wilbert Hamilton to have the knowledge that is needed. And so therefore we are afraid to have those conversations because we lack the knowledge to lead in the conversation. And too many times we want to convey to our children that we are knowledgeable and that we are in control. But I think that the vulnerability of what you don't know and having that initial conversation with your children or with other family members will help bring everybody into the knowledge of their financial health and generational wealth. Number three, Wilbert, I think, as you said, that diversification, investment diversification. I think also people need to consider diversifying, ownership beyond just our home. Try to building generational wealth means we need to own a few other things, right? I talked earlier about we are our estate and what we own is our estate. Then we want you to boost your savings up, right? As you talk, get more in your savings account, right? Make the sacrifice that the money that you're spending out of your checking account that are going into some places that you could cut back on, cut back. Take the time and do your budget. Look at some things and see where you can shave off a few dollars over some various expenditures and utilize that money and put it into the savings account. Then also, as you said, we'll create the estate plan. That's important because many of us don't seek out the professional financial guidance, and therefore we fail to have a good estate plan. And as a result of that, we end up living in poverty. We end up being poor. But I want to bring a scripture in right now of 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 9. It says, "For we know, ye know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that you through his poverty might be rich." So the sacrifice, the generational wealth sacrifice was already made through Christ. That he had a lot, but for our sakes, he surrendered what he had. He walked through that valley of the shadow of death. And when he went to the cross to die for our sins, but he did not fear the evil that would befall him because he knew that God was with him, and God was with him to establish wealth for us. So he had planned for the worst, and Jesus hoped for the best. He knew the worst was going to come for us. He knew the worst was going to come for him when he came down to earth, but he hoped for the best because he had built his hope on things that were eternal. He had built his wealth and he had his plan laid out for the generational wealth that we're still reaping to this day. So that's key. I want to give us in there. And so when we talk about Jesus and he gave his life for us, and that provides us the riches, I think also we need to, before we go to the end of our show, we need to talk about the fact of how having a life insurance strategy has major benefits for us. So Will, if you could tell us a few things about how we can implement a good life insurance strategy.
One of the biggest misconceptions in our community that was created that's held us back from a wealth transferring, a wealth creating strategy is our misunderstanding of what life insurance was really made for. We think of, money just in case somebody dies. We think of it's enough money to put you in the ground. We think of when somebody asks you how much insurance you need, most people think, well, as long as I got 10,000 or I got 25,000, that is sufficient. Well, that's enough for a funeral in most cases. That's about it. But most people before they leave this earth going to go into the hospital. So the hospital bill is going to be as much as the funeral is going to cost. So we have to understand that. And most times the biggest loss when someone passes away is not the loss of, and the cost of the funeral, it's the loss of income that person has. So understanding that life insurance is the most tax efficient investment vehicle ever created. Period, point blank. It is the only opportunity that you can put money in and get it back out completely non-taxable. The closest thing to it is a Roth. Now, but the Roth has more restrictions because guess what? You can't touch it till 59 and a half without that same benefit. And there's limitations on how much you can put into it. With life insurance, if structured properly, there is no cap. So a lot more freedom and flexibility. And of course, things have to be designed properly and properly structured. But people perish due to lack of knowledge. Life insurance is not something just for you to get to put somebody to the ground. It's something your family needs to maintain their lifestyle, not just for you while you're here, but for your kids when you're without them. See you next time.
Yes, indeed.